Welcome, everyone, on this chilly winter evening in North America here in Toronto. It's amazing how the temperature drops as soon as the sun goes down. As I was walking earlier today, it was cold, but with the sun shining on you, I had my hat off, had my gloves off. But when you lose the sun, the chill is worse than ever. And you might notice that I have a really good case of February hair. That's what we call what happens to our hair here in the north when you have to wear a hat everywhere you go. And there's nothing you can do. You can blow dry it over and over again, but it just gets flattened down and it's full of frizz and a lot of static electricity. February hair. Well, welcome everyone. I see a lot of regulars here, which is always nice to see, and a couple of people that we've haven't seen for a couple of months. Corrine, John from Cape Breton, Rhonda from Houston. Is it Jean or Jean from Florida? Barbara, good to see you. And holy mackerel, of course, they're from all over. It's just lovely. I just love to see the globe covered in quilters. Oh, Celia Walker from Scotland. I'm not sure if you've had a chance, Celia, but my latest guest on Karen's Quilt Circle, I'll just kind of throw that up here right now, is Paula Hope, and she is from just south of Glasgow. I had picked up a book when I was on my way back from a quilting book on my way back from Holland, and I saw in the credits that she was a technical editor, and I wanted to learn more about it. A lot of people have requested this, where can they get the pattern to the Dutch circle sampler? And if you take a look on either the Facebook page or the Instagram page, I have given a link to her Etsy shop. It's just, I don't know why. I've been just loving this quilt. I just love those big, thick borders. I didn't think I would like them when I first saw them, but this quilt has definitely captured my interest, and I've been playing with all sorts of ideas from it too. So, lots of questions already. We've got them in the, some of them came in through email, some of them have come through Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and some of them are here in the comments. So let me just start with a couple here. Shelley Daniels has asked, can you mix batik and cotton in the same project, such as crumb strips? You can mix up your fabrics as much as you want. The only problem that you have when you're mixing fabrics is they may shrink at different rates. So it's often good just to have them pre-washed, and that doesn't mean they have to go through the washing machine. It just means you have to just spray them with a lot of water and then press them dry, or just let them dry on their own. But when you get down to that crumb size, it really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether they're washed, they're unwashed, whether they're batiks, whether they're linens or whatever. When they get down that small, that differential is just so minimal. It would make a difference in a quilt, though, like a big piece in a quilt. So just keep that in mind. I know people use different types of fabrics on the back. I, for one, do that too. I like cotton sateen on the back, and I like flannel, and I'm always sure to make sure that those are pre-washed ahead of time. I love this one. Wendy Gilbert has asked, are you going to do an amazing pretty series as opposed to the ugly quilt series to help us cut our precious beauties? Well, the trick to cutting your precious beauties is just taking a look at the fabric and seeing how large the motif is. And when you have a quilt pattern, just take some cardboard and cut out that size of that piece and then run it over your fabric. And what you're looking for is a consistency in value, and you're looking to see whether the personality of the fabric comes out in that small piece. So I'm sure you've seen Tula Pink's prints where they have these beautiful animals on them, or there's a couple of people in some of them. So if you cut those up small, you're going to lose that character. You're wanting to choose a nice big block. I think I measured one the other day, about 6 inches for that beautiful print. But her polka dots can go down very, very small. You could be making 1-inch HSTs with those polka dots. But if you use it in a big piece, like an 8-inch piece, it's not going to have a lot of flavor to it because that motif is too small for that large of a block. So it will take you a couple of years before you get the courage to cut your favorites. And you may not have to cut your favorites. Like collecting fabric and some beautiful fabrics, they're just nice to have around sometimes. So you don't always have to cut into your good stuff if they're that special for you. So I got a lot of questions. I got this question a lot during the Declutter Challenge. Bradley Walters has asked, how do you store the rulers on my cabinet doors? I just put little cabinetry nails in. They're straight nails, they're short, and they've gone in about, like the doors are thick. They're about 3/4 inches. And I just put them in, and because they're not carrying a lot of weight, the nails are doing fine. So some people might be horrified that I put nails in, but with a little bit of spackle, if I ever decide to use that room for something else, those doors will be just fine. Patricia Ladeau, is it Landrio? Landrio? I'm sorry, I'm pronouncing the name wrong. How do you sandwich a quilt top when you have limited table size and space? So you may even have a lot of space, but you don't have a lot of flat space to lay out a quilt, and a bed is too soft. You would like a nice hard table. So there's 2 methods that I recommend. One is don't do it on a table at all or the floor, do it on a wall. Just take some masking tape and put the backing up, spray it with fusible spray, and then put the batting up and spray that with fusible spray, and then put the top up. Now, personally, I always do the spraying outside. And in my condo, I don't have any space for that, so I actually use a firewell a staircase. So, yeah. I know people that take their tops and everything into either a community center or a church basement or their office board table as well. Some people have the ability to do them when they are on retreat. And if all of those things don't work, there's a method called the pool noodle method. Now, you would have seen the beginning of the basic essence of how it's done in my last dollar store hack video. I have some pool noodles in that, and you roll up the back, you roll up the middle, you roll up the top, and then you just pull them out as your space is available, and then you roll the other part of the quilt up onto another one. The trick is you've got to have the big rolls. The small ones are not good. You'll just get a little bit, the layers will shift too much. And none of these methods are foolproof. You still need to, as you're working with your quilt, be careful, make sure everything's spread out. And I do have a video on 6 different ways to make a quilt sandwich. So check that out too. That might give you some pointers. Before we go any farther, I just wanted to make an announcement just about memberships. YouTube has changed how you can see memberships. Let me just see if I can pull up my screen here for you to take a look at. So if you are not a member of Karen's Quilt Crew, you will see something like this on your screen. You see along the top, there's home, videos, shorts, live, podcasts, playlists, posts, and the store. Now, I don't sell anything except for a couple of mugs, so you don't need to worry about that. And if you're looking for a video on a particular topic, this little hourglass right there is where you search. But if you take a check under the posts, this is where you'll see all the information on the lives coming up. However, if you are a member of Karen's Quilt Crew, I'm just going to here. There will be a membership tab that comes up. I'm hoping that everybody can see this. Some people say that my screen has gone frozen, but hopefully it'll be good in the rerun as well. So you can join my crew from on the home page. If you go to the home page, you can join my crew from this line right here. But if you go to the membership page, this is where you see all the perks from being a member. So this is where we have a course coming up. Our first block of the month is this month, and this is where the announcement for that will be. And we also have a Stitch and Chat every month where the announcement and the Zoom link for that meeting will be. So that's just a little change that has happened with YouTube just January 1st. It kind of shocked me. I should say February 1st. I wasn't prepared for it, but it's just a little bit, they're always tweaking it, trying to make it work better. So I think that's actually a really good difference, because you'll be able to see clearly the information for the memberships. So the Stitch and Chat is not recorded. Just because we talk about some private things in there and we don't want those all over the internet. But the classes are recorded. And in that list, you'll also be able to see the links to those classes. So there also will be a playlist. If you take a look on the tab on the playlist, there will be a playlist for memberships, for the membership-only videos. So it's just a new thing that's happened with YouTube in the last couple of months. So I hope we can all take advantage of those features. Somebody has asked, any advice for how to organize your stash to make scrappy quilts? I'm definitely missing some elements. So I'm not sure how long you've been listening to me, but I am a big proponent of just figuring out how you want to use your scraps before you develop how you're going to cut them up and how you're going to store them. Because you may not like working with them, or you only like working with a particular size. I was reading a comment by someone today that said when at one point anything under 5 inches she would give away. And then it turned to 10 inches, and then she would give that away. And now she's at the point where anything less than a fat quarter she's giving away. So that's her method. For me, I keep everything bigger than an inch. I have a purpose for everything, and I have a funnel for how they move through my space. And that will help you define how you want to keep them. As you experiment with your scraps as well, you'll understand how you like to use the scraps. When I was first making 4 patches out of 2.5-inch squares, I was just using one high and one low value. And I found I wasn't very pleased, like it wasn't making me very happy. And then when I moved to doing 4, all of the same color, so 4 blues or 4 reds or 4 yellows, I really like that. And I've been able to make a number of quilts that I'm quite happy with because of that. But in my bigger blocks, anything goes. And like the one that's the I think the dot in the middle, and they have flavors, and I love the different combinations. Sometimes I throw things together that I think will not work, and sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. But the truth is, it all ends up in a scrap quilt, and there's a lot more things that work in a big quilt, and it doesn't matter whether it doesn't work in the small square. But again, it's how you use them. For instance, I will not have a lot of desaturated colors in my scrap pile because I don't like to use a lot of desaturated colors, or like the beiges and the grays. That's not really me. I also don't like to use white and black. You may like that high contrast. So again, let your experimenting and everything dictate how you store your scraps. And the trick is to keep them flowing through. If they're accumulating in any part of the system, you're collecting too many. And that would be that would be a shame, because then you get crowded and you're around to the Declutter Challenge again. Just another mention about the Declutter Challenge. The live component, or the concurrent component with me doing the 21-day Declutter Challenge, is over. But those videos will stay live, and the blogs will stay live. And there's a declutter page on my website, and if you scroll down to the bottom, there's a complete library of it all, both the videos and the blog, and they all interconnect. There's a link on every video for the blog, and there's a link on every blog for the video. So those will stay up until November-ish, either the beginning or the end, depending on what's going on in my life and how I'm preparing for the next one. But they will go down approximately 30 days before the next Declutter Challenge starts. So it doesn't matter if it takes you 21 days to do the challenge, or it takes you 3 months, or it takes you half a year or a year. Those videos will be there for you to use. Okay. Susan Waymeyer has asked, do I steam? Why or why not? I do not use steam anymore. I find my technique is between the setting the seam, doing the finger press, having an ironing plan to begin with, is giving me good results. And the element of steam brings in some shrinkage, which is not good, and it can also warp and distort your blocks. So I have just felt I've just moved on to a different different level of quilting where I no longer need that. But that's me. It doesn't have to be a big divide. It doesn't necessarily mean it's wrong. You do what works for you if you're getting the results that you want. Lynn Bean has asked, she wants to make a snuggle blanket for a 9-year-old, but she's unsure of what a good size will be. Any suggestions? Well, take a look at her size. You know, is she a tall girl? Is she a short girl? Because, you know, comparing my children to other children, they never ever matched up. My kids were always so big compared to other kids. But just think of, if you're going to snuggle down in a quilt, you're looking at the length. If you're going to wrap the quilt around you, it's also the length. So don't worry if it doesn't fit around them in a widthways, because you're going to turn it around 90 degrees to get that wrap around. But this young girl is also going to grow a bit too, so you want it to last a couple of years. So I would probably take her height, maybe add 6 to 12 inches to it. A good cuddle quilt size is around 45 wide to 60 tall, and if she's a tall person, maybe you just make it a little bit longer. I know I made a quilt for my husband, a cuddle quilt for my husband, and he wanted it really big. I mean, it was the size of a twin blanket. It was 60 by 80. And yes, when he wants to, it can cover him completely on the couch, but most of the time he doesn't want that much coverage, and he'll do it double layered, and he has now rethought the size of quilt that he would like. I think it would have been better if it was a little bit smaller. Drew Coach has asked, what is my favorite way to quilt a throw on a domestic machine? A throw size quilt is, again, throw, cuddle quilt. They're about the same size. I think it's just the same term for the same thing, a different term for the same thing. Most of the time, I just do free motion quilting on that size, and I will just pull out a motif and just practice, because I really feel at this point it's still practice. Just practice doing it. I do not like my quilt to be too dense. I do not like the dense quilting on throw quilts because I want them soft and cuddly. If it's slightly bigger, or if it's for somebody important that I'm giving it, important to me that I'm giving it to, I will probably do a pantograph. And I won't do a pantograph on a smaller quilt because by the time you set it up and everything, you would be done the quilting, a free motion quilting. So I only do it for the larger ones or for the extra special ones. So yeah, that's what I do. Sometimes I do ruler work. Yeah, still learning, still learning. I'm far from an expert on long arm. Claudine Went has asked, do seams have to be pressed a certain way in a drunkard's path block? Mine want to settle where they will. Well, I really think when you do a curved line, there is a preference in the fabric which way it wants to go, but you also want your seams to nest. So depending on how your drunkard's path is, if any of those seams are meeting, you're going to have one piece that goes one way and one piece that goes the other way. But if they're not matching up with anything, they can go any which way, as you say, go which way the fabric wants to go. And just be aware of that profile of if you're doing it with a very light colored fabric, you don't want to get that shadow on the background. So trim that before you iron. W. Summers says, how do I summon the courage to sew my first quilt binding? I'm always surprised that people are nervous about putting on a binding, because I never had that stage in my quilting. I just blindly went for it, and I went for it. It's really not that, I'm going to say not that big a deal. I'm not saying that you're not right to be nervous, but there's something about your are you worried that it's not going to be perfect? Are you worried that it's going to fall off? Some people get very, very stressed out over bindings. I know people that binding is their thing. They do all sorts of beautiful things. They do piping, they do rickrack, they do special stitches, they do flange binding. It's really not, you don't need to do that for your first quilt. You can just do something very simple. I have a binding series. Watch that first video and you'll be fine. The one place that really will make a difference in your binding is having a walking foot, because those layers want to bunch up. They don't go through at the same rate. And I find when I use my walking foot, my results are so much better. So yes, some people are on the binding. Some people love binding. Some people are very stressed about it. Yeah, it's funny how we are in two camps on a lot of different things. Brenda Emmons says, I'm having trouble knowing when angled seams, such as when sewing with an HST, need to come to a point and when they need the 1/4 inch seam allowance. Is there an easy way to know and remember? Well, it's not so much that an HST doesn't have a point on it. It's when it connects with another HST block that you can see a point appear. And It's something that has come since we started sewing on a sewing machine. We become very fixated on that 1/4 inch because that 1/4 inch is what gives us our accuracy. A person who's hand sewing can draw on the lines. They can use 1/8 of an inch seams or 3/8 of an inch seams. It doesn't matter because they're sewing on a line and they know where those things intersect. And we lose that focus of where things are supposed to intersect because we're doing this 1/4 inch seam. So the most important thing is to be sure that your 1/4 seam is accurate. And it's not accurate by just sewing a seam and then measuring how far the stitches are from the edge. You actually have to sew 2 pieces and then measure the distance between the 2 seams to see whether you're getting the right size. Because as you fold those fabrics over, they will occupy a little bit of real estate in that seam, and it can be either smaller or it can be bigger than you think it is. So I've just had the problem that I've been sewing on my one particular block all week long, and yesterday I noticed that things weren't lining up properly, and somehow my guides had moved over. I should be checking that every single day just to be sure. You use bonus blocks. It's a cheap, not cheap. It's just an insurance that all your blocks are going to come together the right way. And I'll tell you, when those points line up, that never ever gets old. So take a look at my ironing video. Take a look at just take a look at the block that you're doing before you have to do it, and just see where the 1/4 inch lines up. So, like if you're doing a half square rectangle, you know that angle's a little bit deeper, so that intersection point isn't going to be at the same spot as it is on an HST. So just use your ruler and measure along and just see, oh, I'm supposed to be getting here. It's not there. It's here that I need to go through. Yeah. Any advice on when to use a walking foot versus free motion technique? I think she says free motion needle, but I'm not sure if that's correct. I think, are you talking about quilting or are you talking about just sewing in general? A walking foot is really important when you're doing straight line quilting because it's just going to keep all that managed, all those layers going against each other managed while you're as you're going across the quilt. When you're free motion quilting, you don't have a presser foot that's mushing things together. It's just going around on top of it. But your hands are going to have to be going at the right rate so you get the stitches the size that you want them. So sometimes it's just what kind of fussy you want to deal with, and I think you should be practicing both. And the key word there is practicing. Don't practice on your good quilt. Practice on pieces, your scrap pieces and your scrap pieces of binding, to just get the feel of that before you start free motion quilting, or the feel of it before you start using your walking foot. Cynthia Growell has asked, I want to make a quilted apron, and I've never quilted before. Do you have any advice? Well, I just mentioned the walking foot is important. A quilted apron. Just thinking of what you would use it. I'm sure you're probably just going to either be doing straight lines or lines that are in a diamond. You can use a pen with disappearing ink in it to help keep those lines square. If you're just doing an apron and it's one piece and you're looking for that quilted effect, you're not going to have those rows really close to one another the way that you would if you were doing piecing, because you put rows closer together to secure all the pieces. So if it's just one big piece of fabric that you're quilting, they can be an inch, maybe even an inch and a half apart. Xanthia. For better reach, I use Q-tips to clean beneath the bobbin area. Do you recommend it, or am I ruining your machine? No, you can use Q-tips. Um, the only thing is whether I'm sure you're using good quality Q-tips. It's just whether other things would get stuck in the machine. That's where you would get worried. So if you're using Q-tips and everything's cleaning out and you're not pushing anything, or you're fine with Q-tips. Um, the big problem with cleaning our machines is not blowing any of the fibers and everything farther into the machine. We want to pull them out and not push them in. So you don't want to use blown air. You want to, if you're using a vacuum, I had one on my Christmas lists for quilters. My husband bought me one, and I actually asked for. He gave me one for my birthday, and I asked for another one for Christmas so I could have one at both spots, because it can do both. It can suck it out and it can blow it out. So that's the only thing you have to be worried about. And like on your bobbin case, there's a piece of metal, and there's a couple of other little flexible pieces. I'm not sure what machine you have, like the cutter and things like that. You don't want to be lifting that metal up. And I don't think you can really do that damage with a Q-tip. I've used them before, though I now use an old makeup brush. That's my go-to. Julie Engel says, I have a 1970s boat anchor Kenmore sewing machine that I can't remove the feet. I am a medium skilled quilter. Do you have any recommendations for a good machine? I am a Bernina ambassador. I love my Bernina. I have I have a 750, I have a 790, I have an older, I bought in 1980, I think it's a 910, and I have a serger. And they are lovely machines. I really, really love them. I love the sound of them. I love the way they stitch. But truly, the best thing that a person can look for is a machine that they can afford. So, and you want to have it to be able to be serviced nearby. You have to have a good relationship with the person that you buy it from, because you will need to send it for cleaning on a yearly or bi-yearly schedule, and you want a good relationship with them. You want to be able to trust them that they're going to fix your machine when you have problems. I know, what did I have with one of mine? I think it was just my new serger. No, it wasn't my serger. It was my old, it was my 750. And I sent it in, and my dealer was wonderful. There was a part that they were able to get under warranty, and they handled the whole transaction from beginning to end, even though they didn't do the service in-house. I really like the way they handled me. So you want to just have that kind of relationship with the person that you're working with. Now, if you don't want to buy brand new, there are a lot of good used machines out there that you can buy on Facebook Marketplace. Kijiji, we have Kijiji and Carrot in Canada. People pass, or people are no longer able to use the machines, or they're downsizing and they can't have all their machines. So there's good machines to be had. Mr. Burns. Oh, ML Burns has asked, what do you do with triangle scraps? Oh boy, there's a conundrum, isn't there? You get those from so many different things. You get them from binding, when you trim the corners. There's just little places. Snowballing, you get the stitch and flip. You can often harvest an extra HST, but sometimes you can't. And it seems a good sized chunk, but often it isn't. So I hate to say it, but I have begun collecting them, thinking that maybe some idea will come to me. when I did my Capella cluster quilt, I had tons of tall, narrow triangles at the end of the strips where I was cutting the 45-degree triangles and the wedges. So I have all of these odd size triangles, and right now I'm using them as leaders and enders, and I'm hoping that I'll be able to make an improv quilt out of them all. I've got some ideas that are kind of percolating. Who knows whether it'll turn out, but if nothing else, they are securing my stitches between blocks or just starting my machine for the day. So yeah, there's different. At one point I thought, well, maybe I'll just get a piece of flexi fuse and I'll mark the triangles and I'll adhere everything down and try and make something out of it. But I'm still not sure. Still not sure. And I don't have a good assortment of them as well. Like there seems to be one project where you get like 25 of, but you don't get them from every project. So yeah, I may have to collect them for another 4 years before I try to do something with them. Sarah Thompson has said, I just finished a complex top I'm very proud of. One block wonders with panel and mitered borders, complex math. Now I'm terrified to quilt it. How do you determine a quilting pattern for such a design? Well, often because one block wonders are so busy, it's often better just to do an all-over design. Choose a thread that just kind of blends in with what you're doing. I've done 2 very busy quilts like that, and yeah, I just chose middle of the road thread and carried it through. I'm pretty sure I did a pantograph on both of them. So if you're on your home machine, you could do straight line quilting and just follow the lines of the hexagons, but hexagons don't make it. It's not perfect because of those funny angles. It's not 45 degrees, it's 60 and 30. So I'm always worried that the quilting that I do will interfere with the top, and I think that's what you're fearing here. But I'm so amazed all the time how the quilting just blends into the background if you choose the right color of thread. It doesn't matter, like, you know, as long as the quilting is consistent, it will blend. It will blend. So test out a couple of threads. I don't know whether it's a high contrast quilt that you have or not. Most of those one block wonders will work well if you've chosen a calf fabric, which a lot of people do. They don't have a lot of contrast in value. They have much more contrast in color, and you just find one of the colors in the quilt, choose something just slightly desaturated and use that thread. Yeah. Michelle Etier says, I've got one for you. Can you share a bit about your plans this year for this year and this channel? Well, it's been interesting. I've had two interesting years. Last 2003, I was hit with a lot of facial pain, and I had a couple of other issues that kind of took the wind out of my sails, and I got myself back on track. And this past year, there's been some challenges with members of my family and their health, and I'm just getting older too. And YouTube is changing a bit. The world is changing. There's a lot of different formats of videos out there and these platforms. Instead of there just being a few, there seems to be so many. I'm sticking with YouTube. I'm trying not to spread my wings too far, but I am trying to make more short material. It's a lot of work. It's amazing how much work has to go into a 60-second to a 30 to 90 seconds short. And you have to film them totally different than you film long form because it's vertical. And so you just can't take the footage from what I do for my regular videos and put them into a short. So I'm trying that, and I'm looking forward to this block of the month with Karen's Quilt Crew. It's Karen's Quilt Crew. I've priced it so it's not too expensive. I know things are tight for everyone now, and people are watching their pennies. So I've only kept it at one level. I haven't done multi-tiered or whatever. And I'm looking forward to sharing and teaching some classes online there. Um, Looking forward to teaching on the cruise, looking forward to the textile tour in Indonesia. I haven't mentioned that, but for those that don't know, I'm going to Indonesia at the end of the year. There is a trip to Scandinavia, and it was sold out, but we've had a last minute cancellation. I think they have 4 days before that inventory has to be released to celebrity. So if that's something that you were interested in and you weren't able to get on board, um, now you can. So, but Indonesia, that is a different one. That is a textile tour, and people have asked what's the difference between a textile tour and a cruise. A cruise, you're usually traveling to multiple destinations. You've got this moving hotel with you and great food. Um, we are together for part of the day, but we're not together for the whole day. And many people travel with a friend or with a spouse. There's excursions to go on. Where in the textile tour, we're together a lot of the time. There's free moments and people will break off into subgroups and go off, but a lot of the meals are everybody's together and the travel is all together. And the flavor of the trip is all about fabric, where the cruise is more about the destinations that you're going to. So that's the difference between the two. Um, there. Um, Herlindy has asked me, can you use a zigzag stitch with a walking foot? Yes, you can if you have that type of opening on your walking foot. They've got a couple of different plates that go, at least my version has a couple of different plates that can go in. And of course, your stitch plate on your sewing machine must be set to zigzag as well. Okay, so I was just taking a quick quick look through the line. Thank you very much to Gina, who has been feeding me the questions from behind the scenes, and helping anyone that has a link that they need. Oh boy, okay, see all those. Just looking through them again. Came down with the blue. Oh. Sorry, Debbie, that you came down with the flu, but you can finish the declutter when you get better. And you don't need to rush it either. Just wait till you feel better and then you get back on. Okay. Okay. For straight line quilting on a domestic machine, say a queen size, what size throat do you think a domestic machine should have at minimum? I don't want to do quilt as you go. Having never done that, I can't answer that question. I do know that there's proficient free motion quilters that sew on featherweights, queen size quilts, but they have some experience doing that too. So if this is your first, that may not be the right thing. I don't really have an answer for that. I'm sorry. I know queen is a big one. I know people who have done it, so it can be done. It's just so much more about managing the weight of the bulk of the quilt. So you can get a couple of extra tables behind you. If you, my brother-in-law runs a sail making factory, and he talks about the sail. The people that sew the sails sit in the middle of a cutout in the table, and the sail is all around them, and that's kind of what you need to do too, because You're going to be pushing that weight through the machine, but you don't want to be pushing all the weight through the machine. You want some other things to help you with that. Now, there's a woman, part of our crew, who she now has a long arm, but before she had made some apparatus out of PVC tubing and some clamps, and that helped hold the weight for her. So that's going to be your biggest thing, is managing that weight. And go slow. I know doing straight line quilting is boring. So boring. So just go slow, because you're just going to be doing a lot of adjustments as you go. Deborah Cagle has asked, what is an easy jelly roll quilt pattern? So I have done a video on 6 fast and easy jelly roll blocks. Take a look at those. I've made them all. They're all nice and easy, fast. Jelly rolls are, though they look easy, they're not necessarily easy to use, because they've got those awful pinked edges. I understand why they do the pinked edges, so they don't fray, but it has so much dust with it, and it just plays with your accuracy so much. So just be just be aware that jelly rolls are not as easy as you think they might be. I also did Stash Buster number 8. That is a really fun quilt to do. It's one jelly roll, and it makes, do I have one here? I think I do, but it's probably too much to get out. Stash Buster number 8, that's a good one. And the outside edges will be very stretchy, so cut yourself out some pieces of freezer paper to just secure it and stop it from stretching before you finish the quilting. Chris King. Okay, so I've just got time for a couple more questions. Okay, Chris Kingley. Is Kingley? King L was wondering how your raw edge applique would go in the wash. I thought you had to stitch all the edges. So what they're referring to is, I just had this video that I did of squirrel. This is my oldest UFO, and this is all raw edge applique. This is the original pattern that I was working from, and is that it? Oh, sorry, I may have to do this. And this is what I did. So I did some changes. I couldn't believe how big it is. It's just gigantic. I was always working on a table and never realized the size, but now I have it on the wall. It is a pretty big thing. But this is meant to be a wall hanging. This is not a quilt that's going to go on a bed. This is not a quilt that's going to go over top of anyone and snuggle. This is purely for the wall, for art. Might be my only art quilt that I might ever do, but yeah, it's not meant for the wash. And I am going to, I know Laura Henney, who is the artist who designed that quilt. That's her quilt pattern, and she made up the kit, and she does teach the class. So if you're interested, she does some really nice work. She takes a fine mesh and then she quilts it, but I'm not going to do that with this one. My quilt is not going to move. It's going to go onto the wall. It's not going to be, going to trunk shows or going to shows where hers have to, so people can see what they are. So I'm just going to leave it. I'm going to do straight line stitching, and then I'm going to wrap it on a frame. That's what I've decided to do. And somebody shared that they took a class with her a couple of years ago, and she said that the squirrel was one of the hardest ones to do. Just like it was so like me to do that. Oh, I bought it when I was just barely, I don't even know how many quilts I had finished at that point. Maybe 1, maybe 2. It's funny. Okay. Now, since we're at this, somebody mentioned the jelly roll quilt. This is also another really good quilt to use jelly rolls for. Uses chips and uh, jelly rolls. So the outside of these blocks is made with a jelly roll, and the inside is made with potato chip blocks, which are 2 by 4, 2.5 by 4.5 until they're sewn in. And I just picked those out of my scraps, and this is what you get. It's actually my kind of quilt. It's just full of color, and it was fairly easy to put together. I'm not going to say it was effortless, um, because making those blocks did take several days to get through them all. And then you had to put it together. And I've quilted it, but it's sitting in the binding pile. So when I get the binding on, I'll share it with everyone. And I already mentioned that my interview with Paula Hope, but if you missed it, I also did an interview with Betty Ford Smith a couple of weeks ago. And this is about pine cone quilts. Now, you may not know what pine cone quilts are, and this is what they are. They're made with what I would call prairie points, the way that you fold the fabric. And she makes them in these great big, huge circles. And that's a green one, and here is a purple one. They are just stunning. The interesting thing about in the interview was that she did a lot of work on finding the history of these quilts, and they came from a very, very small part of the U.S. And she wasn't sure, she couldn't pin down whether they were from the indigenous people there or from the enslaved people that brought over the techniques, and more than likely it was a blending of the two. But that's a really good interview. If you, very interesting technique, very generous woman sharing it all with us. So please check that out. I've already shared the Block of the Month program within my membership group. It's called Boost Your Sampler Skills. It's going to be 10 months, 50 blocks, five blocks a month, and they're all with the emphasis on proving your quilting results. So who should join up? Basically, if you have been sewing for a couple of years and you're wanting to improve your skills, you can jump right in. If you're just a beginner, you can jump in as well, because we will be going through the various stages. But the emphasis on it is not the quantity of blocks that you're making, but the technique that you're using within the block. And I'll be sharing all my tips and tricks. So I hope you'll join me for that. And as I said, if you cannot make the time, it will be recorded for your access at any time, whether you take the class or you come to it on another day of the week. It'll be there. So I think we got time for just one more. Alexa Venda, I believe, is thinking of using a soft wool blanket as the combo backing for a lap quilt whose top is sewn from 100% cotton squares. Is this, I'm not sure if you heard that, because I called her Alexa, our Alexa at the other side of the room has asking me what she can help me with. So she says the top is sewn for 100% cotton squares. Is this possible or a poor idea? You know what? People have been attaching quilts to other materials forever. They have found horse blankets. They've definitely wool blankets. You can use a flannel in the middle. You can use a cotton sheet in the middle. I met a woman, one of my very first interviews on the podcast, Pearl Ann Goodings. Her mother used old wool socks in the middle. So they would just be cut flat and put in the middle. So you can use a lot for the batting. The trick is, again, we're talking about shrinkage. Like once you put that in the wash, what is going to happen to it? So wool shrinks a lot. Cotton shrinks a lot, and they shrink at different rates. So that's the only concern. That's the only concern. You can definitely do that. I did an experiment just recently with Minky. I did a quilt without anything in the middle, and I just used Minky on the back. I used it with flannel, and I used it with cotton batting. And I was surprised with the results. They were good in all three. Um, I personally, I just didn't like the one without anything in it, but I could see if you were in a warmer climate, that would be a good idea. Um, so the trick is just, I don't know whether your wool blanket and your top are the same size. If the back is a little bit bigger, I would try a practice piece in the wash. Take a piece of cotton, just sew around it, throw in the wash, and see how badly it distorts. Um, and then you'll have your answer whether it'll work well, or you need to pre-wash the back, or you need to pre-wash both the top and the back. So that's what I would do. Practice. I know it's tedious. I know it slows you down, and it's so hard when you have momentum, but practicing on practice pieces can save so much headache. And you learn so much about how your fabrics work together, how you should iron them. There's just a lot that you learn. So I really, really am pro practice. Well, thank you, every one of you. Holy mackerel, we have a lot of comments in the people have been very active talking with each other and helping each other out. Thank you so much for coming and being with me tonight. It has been, as always, a pleasure. Always enjoy meeting everybody, the new people, and seeing the old people. So I'm just tricking on something here. And so if you have any questions, don't hesitate to put them in the comments of the video. We will save them and we will answer them next month. So happy sewing, everyone. Stay warm out there. Take care. And I will see you next time.